Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, it's time to ramp up for Game 3, and the series shifts back to Arizona. Ranger Suarez will take on Brandon Pfaadt tonight. Big advantage for the Phillies. Can Ranger Suarez continue to be as good as Nola and Wheeler have been? And what changes, if anything, as the series shifts back to Arizona? Finally, the Gold Glove finalists have been announced for the National League, and we'll take you through a couple Phillies who might get a chance to take home that honor. We'll discuss all of it on today's episode of Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that good stuff. This is my second year as host of Locked On Phillies, and it's incredible. Last year, I was very excited. In my first year, we did 100,000 downloads of the podcast. I think we actually cleared more than that, but this year already cleared 200,000. We're on a great run right now with the Phillies being on a great Red October run. So thank you to everyone for being along for the ride. Again, please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that good stuff. It costs you nothing. It's a great way to keep up to date on the latest Phillies information through us here at Locked On Phillies. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode, which today is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms or use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out our friends over at Sleeper today. Now, it's a very interesting Game 3 pitching matchup between the Philadelphia Phillies' Ranger Suarez and the Arizona Diamondbacks' Brandon Pfaadt. If you don't know much about Pfaadt, you're not alone. Not a lot of people know him. Not a lot of people know how to say his name. Trust me, I've had to look up the pronunciation since the series started, and he hasn't even thrown yet. I've had to look up the pronunciation of his name like 30 times. So, yes, Brandon Pfaadt, I believe I've nailed that one down, is on the mound tonight for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, here's the difference over the course of the postseason in statistics between Ranger Suarez and Brandon Pfaadt. Suarez is 1-0 with a 1.04 ERA and a .58 whip. He has outdueled Spencer Strider not once, but twice already this postseason. Brandon Pfaadt, not Spencer Strider. He's got 8 2/3 innings pitched. Now, Brandon Pfaadt, on the other hand, 0-0 record in the postseason, a 3.86 ERA, a 1.43 whip, and 7 innings pitched. That's not bad, right? But that's very similar to the numbers we saw Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen kind of have. Now, Merrill Kelly had a 0 ERA, right? But it's just like you have to have something outstanding over a long period of time to be considered one of those top-level playoff performers. And Pfaadt he's been okay in the postseason. So let's go ahead and look at his regular season stats, and you'll see why this is a big advantage for the Philadelphia Phillies. Pfaadt in the regular season was 3-9 with a 5.72 ERA, 94 strikeouts, a 1.41 whip. By the way, 25 years of age. Not exactly a guy that comes in with all this playoff experience or anything like that. Now, I want to try and see if I can, let me get to his splits because I want to see the difference between him at home and away. So let's just go ahead and go down to here. It's got pitching splits. I don't know why this is so hard to do on the ESPN app, but all it has is all splits. Bottom line is he's a young pitcher, and he gets the opportunity to pitch at home. The 5.72 ERA is one that you look at and you say, okay, not great over the course of a season, especially one that his innings pitched. He was 96 innings pitched, nearly 100 innings. That's a lot for a young pitcher. Ranger Suarez has been here before. He's already outdueled Spencer Strider twice. Brandon Pfaadt has not been here before. He has not done what the Phillies are trying to do, and he has not done what the Diamondbacks are trying to do, which is compete in an NLCS. Just not used to it. The Phillies are used to it. I don't know if you remember, but Ranger Suarez got the final out of the NLCS last year when you knocked off the San Diego Padres. Yeah, San Diego Padres. I can't say San Diego anymore because the Chargers have moved, and I like every time I say San Diego, I feel like I'm naming a team that's not there. Teams move too much. Anyway, yes, you knock off the Padres. Ranger Suarez was the guy on the mound for that. So we know he's ready for this level of a moment. Like Ranger Suarez is cool, calm, and collected. Brandon Pfaadt, on the other hand, just watch a team hang 10 on Merrill Kelly, who had a 0 ERA this postseason. Now he's got to go out there and throw. Another righty, by the way, too. Like that's something that I mentioned before the series, and I'll bring it up again here. Having all these righties in a row, Kelly a righty, Gallen a righty, Pfaadt a righty. It gets the Phillies in a rhythm. They can throw the same exact lineup out there if they want to. I don't know why you wouldn't throw the same lineup out there because, frankly, you just scored 10 runs and shut them out. How much better would you like to play? But, yes, you have the advantage in the pitching matchup in Game 1. And when you look at it, first pitch, by the way, today, something to keep in mind, 5:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A bit of an earlier one here, so rush home from work if you can. You can listen to every pitch of the Phillies hometown radio broadcast of that game on the SiriusXM app. Just go to the SXM app and search Phillies. But I don't know. I see a young righty who doesn't have that great of numbers against a lineup that has been really good in this series. And I see Ranger Suarez as the guy who can go out and shut down any team. And the Diamondbacks offense hasn't been that good. In this Game 3 matchup, the only way Arizona possibly has a competitive game against the Philadelphia Phillies is if they go out there and their pitching is significantly better. You have to shut down this offense because the Phillies pitching is probably not getting worse. The bullpen is really good. The starters, at least to this point, are outstanding. I mean, all of that stuff plays in. And by the way, something to keep in mind too, if you win this game tomorrow, you're playing to close out the series, a 4-game sweep. And the Diamondbacks have already said that Zach Gallen, who started Game 1, they are not going to throw him on short rest tomorrow in Game 4. They're saving him for Game 5. And you're down 2-0. You better win tonight if you're Arizona, or else that's a dumb strategy to not have your best pitcher available on the day that you could be eliminated. You're saving him for a game that might not happen. That's crazy. But that's just the difference between Torey Lovullo and Rob Thompson, between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Arizona Diamondbacks. One team understands the pressure in the moment. One team understands the type of approach you have to have in a postseason series, and one team doesn't. One team hasn't shown it so far. It's a big-time mismatch in this series between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Arizona Diamondbacks, and part of that is the starting pitching. I talked about it yesterday on air on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio, and I asked a bunch of people what their number one most impressive thing was through the postseason so far for the Phillies. And so many people said the pitching, the 1-2 punch of Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola himself, like just the overall way that the pitching has been able to control offenses. So, yes, the pitching has been the strength. And Ranger Suarez is still a guy that you felt comfortable starting not once, but twice. 2 times against the Atlanta Braves. You should absolutely feel comfortable about starting him tonight in Arizona against the Diamondbacks and Brandon Pfaadt, and a guy that's not ready for this moment. Like, he's not. I find it very hard to believe that Brandon Pfaadt's going to go out there and shut this team down. He's not one of those weird lefties that throws from like a weird arm. No, typical righty. Going to go out there, be a middle-of-the-road pitcher, and hopefully he's going to get absolutely shelled just like Zach Gallen did, and just like you saw with Merrill Kelly in Game 2. So I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it again. I feel great about the game tonight. I really do. And the Phillies are favored on the money line. They're minus 130, which is a little bit tighter odds than what you got at home, but I get it. It's an away game. The ESPN matchup predictor, Phillies 58.4% chance to win this one. A little bit tighter. That's tightening down a little bit. And we're going to talk about that coming up because I have a question that we need to answer. What changes as the series shifts out to the desert and the Arizona Diamondbacks start playing? I'll tell you what does and what doesn't when it comes to the next couple games of this NLCS matchup. So we'll discuss that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. I want to tell you about Sleeper first, though, okay? MLB playoffs are here. And that means that as you grow down to the end of baseball season, you're running out of time to win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. The clock is ticking. We're almost to the World Series. You got to get your action in now. So go ahead and check it out because baseball's never been more exciting than it is now. You got big-time players still left in. Harper, Schwarber, Walker, Carroll, other side. You're looking at the Rangers had like 8 All-Stars this year. I mean, you got the Astros, Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve. Like these guys that are next-level stars in the game of baseball are still around. So you can just pick more or less on stats for those stars, like home runs, hits, strikeouts. It doesn't have to be stars. It can be any player. And more for up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right and you could win big. There's so many great things about Sleeper. It's so easy. You can pick up to 8 options. You can win 100 times your cash. Like, I mean, what's not to like? It's super simple. It's a super quick way. You can try and win a good amount of money playing daily fantasy baseball. So use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Go ahead and check out Sleeper, your number one place for daily fantasy baseball. All right, let's jump into the change in the series, which is location, location, location. In real estate, that's very important. But in baseball, in the NLCS, for a spot where it would feel so important, maybe it's not. So yesterday, when I was doing radio, I had a chance to talk to Tim Kelly of Phillies Nation. He was very gracious to join me on my night show that I do on the radio. And Tim Kelly popped in, and I asked him about if this series feels over yet. And he said, yeah, like I try and be more conservative, but yeah, it feels over. The question is like 4 games or 5 games. How quickly can the Phillies win it? Matt Breen, who works for the Philadelphia Inquirer, was on our midday show. I replayed a sound cut from him yesterday on the air, on the radio as well. And he said basically the same thing. It's just a question of, is this series done in 4 or 5? Now, I'm trying to be a little bit more cautious, okay? Because you've seen 2 home games for the higher seeded team. If this was the Atlanta Braves, like I always try and put myself in the opposition's shoes. If this was the Phillies playing the Braves and you lose 2 games down in Atlanta and you're coming back to Philadelphia and you've got a chance to play at home, what are you saying? You're saying, okay, well, they have no idea how to beat us at our place. We know this. This series isn't in trouble until they prove that they can win games on the road. And that's true for any postseason series, right? But the Phillies have proven that they can win games on the road. We know this. And here's the other thing, right? The number one thing that doesn't seem to shift all that much is the crowd when it comes to going back to Arizona. Tickets are like $8 to get into that game out there. There are Phillies fans flying in from all over the place to Arizona to watch this game in person out there. I'd be surprised if this game was less than 40% Phillies fans. I think you're going to see 40% or more of the crowd be fans of the Philadelphia Phillies. And Tim Kelly's already out there. I was talking to him about that. He's like, his flight's packed with Phillies fans on the way out there. Like, it's super, super interesting how many Phillies fans travel and how tough it's going to be, right? The other thing, you got to remember, 5 o'clock game. This is poor scheduling on Major League Baseball's part. 5 o'clock game, you can listen to every pitch of the Phillies radio broadcast of that game on the SiriusXM app. Just go to the SXM app and search Phillies, and you'll be able to hear Phil's Diamondbacks NLCS Game 3. 5 o'clock game Eastern Standard Time, which means it's a 2:07 game out in Arizona. And that's middle of a workday on a Thursday. Some guys and gals will take off, right? Some folks will have the luxury to be able to say, no, I'm not going to the office today. I'm going to take off. But put yourself in their shoes again. If you just watch your team lose 2 straight games, get beat down by a better opponent, lose 10-0, get their teeth kicked in, your top 2 pitchers have already thrown, and now it's a middle of the day, work day, Thursday game, I'm not going to that. I'll tell you honestly, I'm not going to that. I'm not spending my money on that. I don't care if it is the price of a beer. I'm not taking off work to go see my team get their teeth kicked in a spot that's pretty difficult for them. So what changes? The number one thing that changes is you're not at Citizens Bank Park anymore, right? You don't have the crowd behind you. You don't have the loudness that affects the opposition, but it doesn't fully flip. You might still have the advantage and people there. There might be more Phillies fans at these games than there are Arizona Diamondbacks fans, which is insane to say. You're basically going all the way around the country to a game that you don't really need to go to because your team's that much better. It's just, nope, screw it, we're going. We're watching the Philadelphia Phillies. We're flying to Arizona. We're going to this game. It'll be a fun trip. I was considering doing it myself. I have a couple things with work that I got to do that kept me unable to do that. But also, I mean, it is still rather expensive to get a plane flight out there. But that's something that, while it might not be the Red October environment you have at the bank, well, it definitely won't be the Red October environment you have at the bank. I don't think it's flipping to, oh, well, now you have to play in the opposite of that environment. No, I think at best for the Diamondbacks it's neutral, and at worst it could be still a Phillies positive crowd. So that doesn't change. The other thing that shifts too is you're now into the point of this series where a couple things. First off, you're down your top two pitchers on both sides. But for the Phillies, that means you still have Ranger Suarez, Taijuan Walker, Christopher Sanchez, Michael Lorenzen all to go. Sanchez was outstanding this year. Lorenzen threw a no-hitter. Taijuan Walker was one of the top wins leaders in baseball. Ranger Suarez has outdueled Spencer Strider twice already this postseason. That's who the Phillies have. The Diamondbacks have Brandon Pfaadt and then a bullpen game and then hope Zach Gallen's good again for the next game. Like, very few options. And if you get the Pfaadt early, he's going to have to wear it, or you completely ruin their strategy of throwing a bullpen game tomorrow. I mean, the Diamondbacks are in a really, really rough spot when it comes to their pitching. And this is why the Phillies are where they are. Not only has their offense been good, but their pitching has showed up in the biggest way. They built a competitive bullpen with some strong names and track records and just said, go out there and get ready for October. And they have. They built a strong rotation with a lot of nice pieces, and they bring in Michael Lorenzen at the trade deadline to kind of save these guys' arms, so they're hitting the ground running come October, and they did. And the top 2-3 guys have been really good. Now you get into a 7-game series where you might need to throw more of these guys, and opportunity will come, but the depth for the Phillies is light years better than what the Diamondbacks have depth-wise when it comes to the pitching situation. So you've got that on your side as well. What does change, though, for the potentially negative? The Diamondbacks are a scrappy, tough team. They deserve to be here. They fight really hard when their backs are against the wall, and you have just forced them up against the wall. You've just forced their backs to their wall in their own stadium. I know they are only down 2-0. This is not an elimination game, but it might as well be, because you go down 3-0 to start the series, you're in trouble. You're in big, big trouble, especially considering you don't have like an ace guy waiting in the wings. No. Again, Gallen not going to throw until game 5 per reports from the team, which is dumb considering there might not even be game 5, but that's their decision. So it's going to be tough for the Arizona Diamondbacks to crawl out of this hole. As much as I don't want to say the series is over, it feels very much like that at this point. And if the Phillies win tonight, yeah, the roof is going to get blown off this city, because we are going to know that we're one win away from the World Series. You know what it feels like? It's funny. It feels like doing a little crossover with Eagles here. And by the way, the Phillies, Diamondbacks, 5:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can listen to every pitch of the Phillies hometown radio broadcast of that game on the SiriusXM app. Just go to the SXM app and search Phillies. If you remember back in 2017, 2018, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Yeah, how could we forget, right? But remember how that NFC Championship game felt against Minnesota. It was kind of like worrisome early. There were early nerves. And then you start to run it up on them. And the next thing you know, you're like, it's the third quarter. And you're like, oh, my goodness, this is basically over. And then by the time the third quarter ended, it was a party. Well, you win this in 4 games. So let's look at it as quarters. First quarter, it's like, okay, we're ahead, but it was kind of shaky at points. And it's like, okay, this team might have some fight in it. Second quarter, you run it up. You're like, oh, 10-0, bang. Okay, see ya. We're going to smoke you now. Like, all the momentum's our way. Third quarter, you're kind of sitting in your seat like, feeling pretty good, but there's a long way to go. You got a whole half of football still to play. And then by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, you're dancing. That's kind of what this is, right? We're heading into the third quarter. Like, you can tell we're the clearly better team. The Philadelphia Phillies are clearly better than the Arizona Diamondbacks. But there's a lot of baseball left to be played. So give it a second. But if you get to game 4, it'll just be a party. It'll be absolutely awesome for the Philadelphia Phillies, because you'll know you're going to the World Series. So it's fun. I'm trying to slow the heart rate down a little bit and not be too boisterous about this, but everything points towards the Phillies being in as good of a spot as anybody in baseball. Coming up as we wrap up, I want to do a quick check-in on something we haven't talked about yet. Gold Glove finalists have been announced for the National League and the American League, and Rawlings put those out yesterday. I want to read through for you some Phillies that have the chance to be honored with that. So we'll get into that coming up as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about my friends over at Jase Medical. Okay, there's a lot of uncertainty out in the world today. Like, you can be uncertain in a lot of different situations. You never know. I mean, people are starting to travel for work again, post-pandemic. A lot more people on the roads. You're doing stuff out and day to day and everything where you interact with other people. You interact with situations that could potentially lead to medical emergencies. You have to be prepared. And Jase Medical, now they have the Jase case, right? The Jase case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You never know when you're going to need it, but you know when you do need it, you want it there. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medication based on your unique needs. If you have a certain allergy to something, maybe you need that in your Jase case. If you have something that, I don't know, just certain medical needs that not every person has, you can customize it, which is even better. And that that ability to customize. I was going to try and say customizability, which is not a word. That ability to customize your Jase case, it can be life-changing. It can be life-saving. So go ahead and check it out. And Jase Medical is awesome at it. Go to jasemedical.com and enter the code Locked On at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code Locked On at jasemedical.com. All right, let's run through the Gold Glove finalists for the National League. Now, the interesting point here overall is that there's an interesting omission at third base. Nolan Arenado, who for the first 10 years of his career was the Gold Glove winner at third base in the National League. Started with the Rockies, then obviously moved on to the Cardinals. He is no longer going to have that streak. He was not listed as a finalist for the National League Gold Glove at third base. So that streak comes to an end. That's sad to see because I would have loved to see that progress as long as possible, just as like a fun baseball point of view. But anyway, let's get into the stuff that affects the Phillies. So I'm just going to run through this as MLB has on the graphic here. National League finalists. We're going to skip some positions because it's obvious the Phillies. I don't think the Phillies are going to have a left field Gold Glove candidate with Kyle Schwarber spending most of the time out there. But catcher, Patrick Bailey of the San Francisco Giants, Gabriel Moreno of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who you're playing right now, and JT Realmuto of the Philadelphia Phillies are your 3 finalists for National League Catcher Gold Glove Award. JT doesn't deserve it this year. It should be Moreno. I think he's been better, but reputation plays in, and JT deserves to be a finalist, I believe. I mean, he's still one of the best catchers in baseball, if not the best when you add in the offense he adds. He's unbelievable. That's not a knock on him. I just think that he hasn't been at his 100% best defensively this year, but he's still been really, really good, and he's in there. Maybe they'll give him one based on reputation alone. Phillies don't have anyone in left field. They obviously don't have anyone at first base with the rotating situation over there. Johan Rojas has not been up long enough, so no center field either. Second base, Nico Horner of the Cubs, Ha-Sung Kim of the San Diego Padres, and Bryson Stott of your Philadelphia Phillies. Stotty, his second year up, and he's already a finalist at Gold Glove at second base. I mean, not only does the kid put together great at-bats, but he's getting recognition as one of the best second basemen, not just the National League, but baseball in general. That's a huge thing for a young player in Bryson Stott. So a great step in his career to be nominated for that or to be a finalist for that. And we'll see if he ends up winning it. I'd be surprised if he does, but we'll see. I think that one might end up going to Ha-Sung Kim. But Stott being in there is great. No one in right field. The Phillies had no outfield Gold Glove candidates, with Nick Castellanos with a revolving door in center and Johan Rojas eventually taking over, and Kyle Schwarber out and left. Not surprising. Third base, Alec Boehm not listed. Shortstop, Trey Turner not listed. He's had a lot of issues. Utility is an interesting one. There's a utility position down here. Mookie Betts, Ha-Sung Kim, and Tommy Edman are all listed there. So some guys you'll see multiple times. Well, they're listed in the utility spot because they play different positions. And here's the fun one. Pitcher. Jesus Luzardo of the Miami Marlins is one of the nominees. And then the other two come from your Philadelphia Phillies. Taijuan Walker and Zach Wheeler, both Gold Glove finalists for pitcher for the National League. I just hope one of them wins it. I think it should be Zach Wheeler because of the way that he's handled the running game, fielded his position, all that good stuff. I think Ranger Suarez could have been in this conversation too if he had been healthy all year. But Luzardo's good too. Walker has been outstanding. I mean, it's nice to see through the whole National League. You have two of the top three fielding pitchers, and one of them's not even throwing in the postseason. That shows you the depth I was talking about with this Phillies rotation. I mean, they're in such a good spot right now that amidst Game 3 of an NLCS, we're talking Gold Glove because this series feels over. It does. So, I don't know. Hopefully the Phillies will lock it down and make us look right and not make me feel dumb for pretending like this series is pretty close to done, if not done already. But we head into Game 3 tonight. It's a big one. Suarez, Pfaadt. You have a chance to bury them, or you have a chance to let them believe they belong. I don't think anyone believes that the Diamondbacks belong in this series right now besides them. Prove them wrong. Prove them wrong that they think that they can play with you. You've already done it 2 games in a row. You're 1 game away from putting them on life support. So rooting for the Phillies tonight, obviously, and hopefully they get the job done. We're talking about a Game 4 sweep opportunity tomorrow. Maybe Mr. Broom will even focus that out. Can you imagine an NLCS sweep job? That would be awesome. Well, we'll see how it plays out tonight, and we'll have plenty to get into on tomorrow's episode, reviewing tonight's game and previewing Game 4. So we'll discuss all of that on tomorrow's episode. That's all for Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that good stuff, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.